Hey, everybody, welcome to Resiliency Radio, your go-to podcast for the most cutting-edge insights in integrative and functional medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Jill, and with each episode, we dive into the heart of personal healing and transformation. Today is no different. I'm going to introduce to you our guest in just a minute or so. His name is Pavle, and he has had quite the experience going from professional cycling to serial entrepreneurialism to burning out and then finding a sense of healing through breath work, through darkness, through just being with himself. And I think you're going to really find this interesting and pique your curiosity about how you can incorporate some of these same practices to find grounding and find your most authentic self as well. So I'll introduce him in just a moment. But before I do, if you don't know already, we've got a ton of great beauty products that are clean, help create amazing skin, protect you from oxidative stress in the environment, and just overall create a glow. Uh, some of these products that contain incredible ingredients like peptides, retinols, and all of the anti-aging factors that you would expect without all the harsh chemicals. So I always want to just mention that drjillbeauty.com is where you can find these. Check them out. I have a favorites package if you don't know where to start. The favorites package is literally the 3 products that I use every single day. This is one of our new favorites. It's called Vita Radiant Cream. It's really great for neck and face and just a general antioxidant moisturizing cream. So check that out, drjillbeauty.com. And if you haven't seen the movie yet, drpatientmovie.com is my documentary. It's now on Amazon Prime and it's streaming for free with ads on YouTube and Tubi. So be sure and check that out and leave a review. Finally, if you are listening and you haven't yet subscribed, I am just going to ask you kindly and lovingly if you would subscribe if you like the show, hit the bell so that you're notified of episodes. We find that generally 5 to 10% of patients or consumers or people, fans that watch the show don't actually subscribe. So for all of the other 80-90% of you who haven't subscribed, if you like the show, help us out, click the subscribe button and the bell to be notified. That would be amazing. And just a huge thank you for those of you who do listen every week and tell me about it. We really appreciate each and every one of you. And we would love to know what kind of information that I can bring, what kind of guest you'd like to see. I take all of that into account. Okay, without further ado, let me introduce our guest. Pavel Stuchlik is a certified ambassador of peace. He's a breathwork instructor who shares 15 years of knowledge and self-realization. He uses music. He has this meditative method called BDM, breath, dance, and meditate, to connect the mind, body, soul, and emotions. And he does many events across the world. I'm not going to prolong the introduction. Let's just get right to the interview with Pavel. Well, welcome, Pavel. It is so great to meet you here, and I'm so excited to dive and just dive into your history, what you've been doing. What I love starting with all my guests is like, how did you get here? How did you like from your childhood, did you always dream of doing breath work and movement and all the things you're doing? I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey to where you're at now. How did that happen?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I think just like many of us, we live this life unfulfilled in to a certain point until we have this awakening. And it's funny, I hear this now all the time. People are saying how their relationship may not be working. They've been emotionally, mentally, anxieties, fear, depression. And it's a pandemic in this world. And it was the same for me. And so I grew up in Czech Republic originally. I'm an ex-professional athlete, so I actually used to ride road bikes all around the world, and I'm also a recovering entrepreneur. In the age of 17, I started my first business, and by that time, I was also a professional athlete, and I was trading carbon bikes between Alibaba and eBay because my dad gave me a choice. Go to school, your life is paid for, or do your little cycling thing, and you're gonna have to figure it out. And so, this is before people trusted Alibaba, or it was what it is today. And I put the picture from Alibaba on eBay, sold it on eBay, never touched the bike, drop shipped it directly from China to the consumer, and it costed me exactly $0 to start. And but it led me into kind of the first pivotal moment in my life. I actually completely collapsed in a Czech national race. I was about 19 or 20 years old. And instead of me recovering and sleeping, I was on a call with the factories and customers. And essentially, I woke up in the hospital because my body just shut off in the midst of literally on a TV in a Czech national race. And I basically got into some of the darkest times of my life. I fell into depression. I had a suicidal thoughts, especially for athletes. You want to do Olympics and, Tour de France or all of these things. And I had to stop because I got diagnosed with Epstein-Barr chronic fatigue. I was literally sick every 2 weeks after that. And it was this, cytokine attack that I call it today that stuck with me for many years. But that led me into health, into alternative medicine. I never wanted to take antidepressants. I never wanted to take, any of that. So I went on a journey through self-transformation. It started off originally, I discovered Dave Asprey and his early stages, then Wim Hof, then kind of, all of the people that we know today from the biohacking conferences. And it got me on this journey. Now, after cycling, I had to quit and I basically moved to America and I put all of my endurance into business. And so, long story short, I landed on something called Orange Theory Fitness. And this was when, there was only 6 locations completely at the beginning. There's now 2,000 around the world. And I was a 22-year-old kid that literally drove up to Fort Lauderdale to their corporate office. And, I came in there with some business experience, but not enough probably to become an area developer. And they gave me 2 days to basically, if you want to join this group, there is a yearly disclosure that happens literally in 2 days, and you can have a state of Georgia.
Wow.
So 2 days later, I'm driving up to Atlanta, and I ended up buying the Orange Theory rights for 55 locations originally there. And then within 6 months, we actually became the fastest growing region in the entire chain. And so, furthermore, we ended up expanding into 7 different regions with almost 100 locations. And it was this next big chapter of my, business success.
Yeah.
But I hit the same burnout again. I hit the same wheel. I start becoming unhappy. There was this, lack of health, anxiety, massive burnouts. And essentially, what I did do well, I committed myself that every 3 months, I'm going to do something ridiculous, something outside of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
And so, it led me on this journey. I first, flew to Japan. I did a samurai camp. Then I trained with the Zen masters. Went into a psychic village in the middle of Brazil, and basically, it was this voice that kept on telling me there's more to life. This is not it. The way we're living, the structures we're living in, the lack of sovereignty we have, whatever it's medical, emotional, physical, across the board. And so I wanted to seek the truth. And it wasn't until about maybe 9 or 10 years ago, went into this dark room in Thailand, and I spent 10 days in complete darkness with no food, no light. And it was as crazy as it gets, with it kind of checked the box of experiences that will transform. And, walked in there, left my cell phone behind, and I literally, it was a torture. It was this, monkey brain that, we all have and we all
Yeah.
struggle with, but there you have nothing but that.
You have no
And so
distractions.
it was really rough until I start using, breath, until I start really moving into the place of surrender. And so I remember until today, it was day 7. I finally let it go. I finally moved into the place beyond the mind. I call it now the timelessness that we're all seeking, that we're all, we want that peace, we want that harmony, we want that uh, calling to be heard, that heart calling. And so for the first time, I was able to hear my thoughts for what I am, not for what I'm being taught, or not all the lies that, we've been taught. And so I basically discovered my passion, which today is, music. I produce music with a Solfeggio frequency on a modern beat. Then I also discovered my purpose, which is, what that voice told me, like, you've been in self-mastery, learning all these things, but it's time for you to go into service. How do you share this with others? So I started doing workshops and immersive experiences and retreats and lectures. And then it also gave me legacy, which is the third part. And that is, how do I make means with living in service? How do I make means with being on this journey, helping others, but yet not have to go back into the office in the traditional ways? And that's what we're about today.
Wow. Okay, there's so many things I want to break down because I think that our listeners, first of all, more than ever before, there's a new consciousness and people are feeling, if they're not aligned, they are feeling, as you know and I know, whether you're in medicine or you're a patient dealing with illness or you're someone else out there listening, if you're not living in alignment, your soul knows it. And what you're just described is this incredible journey of the soul, which is our like, why are we here on this earth, right? And like bumping into what is meaning, what is purpose, how do I sit with myself? And a couple of the themes I want to talk about before we go on to the music and the solfeggio and all of that is I see a lot of people, and I was one of them, where athleticism, training, work become addictions, right? And because they're socially acceptable, we don't talk about them as addictions. But in my mind, this addiction is way bigger than alcohol and drugs. It is what do we do to numb ourselves and turn off the head chatter and just go, 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 which you're, as you told your journey, first of all, you're cycling intensely, right? And then you're like this serial entrepreneur, and then you're traveling for experiences. So you're dopamine hit after dopamine hit after dopamine hit. And then you tell us about going to the darkness, and in the darkness or in the stillness, wherever that looks like for those listening or for you or for me, we have to face ourselves, don't we? And so many of us, and so many of you listening out there probably haven't faced yourself. I know when I first started doing the work around 40 after my divorce, I started being still and I was so uncomfortable. And it wasn't like your darkness, it was just a tiny smidgen. But what I noticed is all of a sudden, guess what? Emotions come up and my thoughts go crazy, like those tangents that happen when we're not moving and we're not doing and we're not producing and we're not doing a new job and doing a new company. I see that so commonly that we're so busy that busyness itself is a dissociative state, right? So let's go back to that darkness because for you, it was the darkness. It forced you to deal with yourself. For many people, it's just being still. Many people, it's maybe like an illness hits, right? And all of these things are teachers. So for you, also, that Epstein Barr and all that happened, which happens to many of my patients, is literally like this teacher that's metaphorically saying, hey, this illness is for your good and for you to transform, right? Do you want to talk a little bit about how do we be with ourselves? And for other people, it may not be the darkness, but it's this, how do we stop going, 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 and getting our a value from what we do and start to go into that being and start to find value from who are we and why are we here?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we don't spend enough time with just ourselves. And it's funny, exactly what you said. There's so many different addictions and, uh, this addiction of constant doing, if we look at it from like a higher perspective, it's this, we became literally machines in this world. And that is what's causing us stress. That is what's causing us this not sure where we're heading, what we're doing, because we don't allow that time for it. So, what actually helped me, and by the way, the other problem is somebody goes to darkroom or somebody goes to retreats or workshops or vipassana, and then how do they sustain it, right? Because then the regular day hits
Yeah.
them or hits us, and then we have the same choice, right? So I look at life from a micro and macro, cycles. We keep on receiving these patterns or cycles that will keep on coming to us until we re-see them anew. Now, what I used to do is I used to run away from pain, whatever it was emotional. I didn't want to face myself, face the issues that I had, and my life became really hard. Now, through this process, I've learned to welcome the hardships, to welcome those things that are not easy first. So that way you can actually start processing these things on all of these different levels. Now, what are those levels? So I've actually simplified this. There's the me, which is the individual consciousness, and that is made up of your physical health. So you have a cyclical things that keep on coming to you, representation of your physical health. Then you've got your mental health, which is the mind, the ego, or the thoughts, the monkey brain that we all
Yes.
need for survival. But most of the times, this works against us instead of for us. 95% of the thoughts is repetition. And recent studies showed 80% of those are negative. So imagine if we're thinking negatively about ourselves, about our life, and that is coming from the mind, right? The software. to the body, the hardware, where the trillions of cells are constantly listening to the superior mind. So then I was like, it started making, sense. Then you've got the emotional body, which is, feelings, right? That's what makes our life feel real. And from what I've learned is the lowest state is apathy. This is when we're numb, we don't care anymore. The highest state is joy, happiness, and that's why we came here for. In between, we've got guilt and fear and sorrow and so forth. And all of this, again, keeps on coming to us through the same type of people, through the same type of experiences until we face ourselves. Now, once you move past this, we also have obviously spirit. And this is what, after my little transition, I went way too far on the spiritual realms, but we're here to bring in the spiritual, all knowingness, all intuition, that limitless part of us, but bringing into the physical world. How do we actually embody it into the daily basis? And so when I went to Brazil, I've learned that, we've got obviously 5 physical senses. That's what gets us in troubles in a lot of time. That's the overconsumption, right? That's living in the sensory perception. And then we've got 4 mystical senses or psychic abilities, gifts, many different terms for it. Now, this is how we communicate with the spirit, and whatever it's through inner hearing, the little whispers that maybe at night are telling you to turn off the Netflix or start working out. It's the little whispers that always have your back. Then we've got also inner feeling, which is the empaths of the world, where, for example, you had a bad feeling about a situation, about a person, or you walked into a room and there was a fight and you didn't even know it, something didn't feel right. Then you've got your inner knowing, which is intuition, right? When you think, you do not know. When you know, you do not require to think.
Yes.
This is when you knew that you shouldn't have gone to the party. You knew that that person was cheating on you. Whatever that was, it was deeply in every bone of your skin. And then you also got your inner seeing, which is the visionaries of the world. And this is when maybe you see direct impressions. You have an idea of a new, product, right, for entrepreneurs of the world, and that maybe hasn't been done yet before. It usually comes in lucid dreaming, especially in a theta brainwave dominance. Now, this completes the me, right? The individual consciousness that is something that we have to face first. That's the microcycles that I call it. Then we've got the we, the collective, and that's made up of our relationships. So many of us, and by the way, you can do this exercise, whatever you're listening. What I like to do is, imagine yourself closing your eyes if it allows, and imagine that you're surrounded by, 3 to 5 people that you interact with the most. Now, just like a football coach, look at their eyes imaginarily, and then just ask this question: do they bring the best of me? And do I bring the best of them? Or is there some work to do? And not everybody's going to make the cut. That was a hard truth.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I've heard so many people in the past, and it was torturing when you have the silence in dark room, right? There's nothing but to think about all the things you've done, and it's great, but it's also painful. And so I had to accept myself, right, for all of that, so I can move on. I also like to bring the environment. So whenever I'm scanning the we, it's like the quality of air, water, food, soil, all that, is around us because we
I
want to
love
breathe.
that because the foundation of what I'm always saying is clean air, clean water, clean food, clean mind, clean body. So yeah.
Yeah, and because that's all that comes back to us, right? From the me into the we. And then I also talk about social structures a lot, which is, the governments we're in, the taxes and all of that whole part is a whole nother, podcast. And so I call this the me, we, and then the third part is be, which is the supra consciousness. And that's if you keep on zooming out, almost like you come from an ant little size, right, all the way up into the universal part. We're all operating in these micro and macro cycles, and it's basically up to us when we're ready to face this. Now, what Darkroom has given to me was a simple recipe that can work for anyone, how to sustain this, how to keep on, living within these guidelines. And so basically, here it is. Once a day, I spend the first 30 to 60 minutes of the day just by myself. I do not go on a cell phone. and I go inward. Maybe I do some breath, meditation, whatever your heart, sings. I love being in nature. I love, earthing, all of the beautiful, gifts that we all now know nowadays because of the biohacking movement. Now, once a week, I like to spend full day completely off, and that is a digital and physical fast. So that way, again, you come back inward and you can do it in a micro cycles just like this instead of, having to go for the full, whatever, 10
Right.
day or and so on. And I reassess my week past, my week forward. What do I want to experience? Where do I go? Because our life is all made up of choices and consequences. But we give that choice away to the external rather than taking that time to dictate from the internal. Once a month, I spend 3 to 4 days. So again, it's a little bit a longer block. And once a year, I spend 10 to 15 days. And, generally I go 10 days to darkroom. So I've now spent over
Wow.
50 days in darkness. So every year it's been my, medicine. And then the last 5 days is for integration and getting ready for the next year. But you don't have to go to darkroom to do this, right? You can go get a vacation, go on a hiking trip, do something that's for you. So it's kind of like your thinking vacation to reignite, rethink, reassess, where am I heading? And so today I do over 120 events a year, literally all across the world, on every continent besides Antarctica. And I feel more in harmony and balance and health than I ever did before. And it's because I follow literally this to the T. And so if you can take something from today, it's like taking that time for you to reassess, reevaluate, and move forward.
That is so powerful. And I have a personal experience because I just returned from Costa Rica, which is one of my favorite places to visit. And um, I too, in the mornings, will just take a journal and just be praying and journaling. And often through that journaling time, some of my best ideas and insights come. And what I find is when life starts to push me and shove me into a box, and of course, we have choice. So I'm not saying I don't have a choice about this, but the average person out there is like, well, I have work and I have responsibilities and stuff. You have to really choose and be very deliberate, and you have to protect this with your life, this space, because I find if I go more than 2 or 3 days without my prayer and meditation and quiet time in the morning, I am much more reactive to the world, right? Like otherwise I can be very conscious, and if someone says something to trigger me, I'm like, oh, sweetheart, it's okay. Like I can just respond with love and kindness. It pours out of me because for me, that's from the divine, from God within me. And every time I fill up with that, it's like filling your gas tank in the morning, right? Then I know I can respond with loving kindness throughout the day. But if I miss that too many times, it's definitely more reactive. And I think people out there are pressured more and more. Our world is accelerating the pace of information. The amount of things are not in the same alignment of how our brains can process it. So most everybody I know is a little overwhelmed right now. And I think your solution is exactly the solution to this overwhelm that you might be feeling if you're listening. What I was going to say, in Costa Rica, of course, I had extra time and extra space. And literally, I think it might have been the first time in 20 years where I took a real, true vacation, no electronics, like offline. Like it was amazing. And I felt so refreshed and so restored. And I remember one morning I'm journaling, and there had been one business thing that had just shifted recently where kind of a door had closed and some other doors were opening. But I just heard from God, just um, wait and see what I can do next. And I wrote this down and I started journaling, and I just had, and I just, then I had this vision and talking about the like clairvoyance and stuff. I saw this like garden hose, like I'm watering this beautiful flower garden, and I'm just watering, the water's pouring out. And all of a sudden that just turned off, and I hear like go to the next place, and I go to another garden and the water turns on. And for me, all that download, I'm just giving an example because for me, I literally get these little things and I just journal them, and I don't have to even know what they mean. I just like, okay, God, thank you for that little vision. So what it meant to me at that moment, and we'll see what happens, is this little area that's kind of shutting down in work, you're going to take that water, it's going to turn off, but there's something better. There's another garden that I have for you. And for me, I can be just like a little kid being like, oh, I can't wait to see what God's going to do next for me. And but it's only in those quiet times where I see that. And then whatever happened with this other part of my business that was shutting down, I'm like, I'm so at peace with it. It doesn't bother me. Whereas if I wasn't in that quiet time, seeing that vision and meditation of God saying, let me show you what's next, then I can go with just joy and excitement. I can completely surrender to what's happening and then know that there's something coming. And what'll happen, and I'm sure you've seen this too, is like in 6 months or a year, I'll look back and be like, Oh, that's what was going on, right? So that's just a little tiny personal example because I feel like just like you, and I have to, if you're listening out there, like, how do you do this? I fight it every day. I still have to make sure I get up and go to that place and spend that quiet time with God because otherwise I am just much more reactive and I'm not surrendered. When we're truly surrendered, I'd love for you to talk about your experience with surrender because clearly for you, the darkness was ultimate surrender. I feel like it's so beautiful what life brings, but we have to just completely surrender into things like you said, suffering, difficulties. When I first got this news about a small part of my business, I was devastated. I was like, oh, wait, this is just a water hose shutting off here for another opportunity, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's the life that we're unfortunately, fortunately living in. Like on the fortunate side, it gives us the opportunity for the fastest growth possible because when we do take it seriously, most people view spirituality, self-help, development, as a convenience. And when something happens, then we're seeking it right away, right? When we're in pain, when we're in grief or whatever life, brings us. And I was so afraid. It's funny, my motivation maybe wasn't fully positive at first, but I saw my grandma, she had a breast cancer, always negative mind and all of this, toxicity right around her life. And and I was so afraid to learn through the gutter anymore
Yeah, yeah,
that because we learn the same lessons, right? And
right.
we have that choice. We learn it from love, expansion, or we learn it from gutter, from fear, pain, anxiety, and that's where it comes down to love or fear at the end of every decision that we make. And we forget how powerful we are, and most importantly, we forget that it all starts with the me, with yourself first. And actually, this is also especially for women. Women are never-ending givers in this world but forget that we can only give as much as we learn how to receive. And so what I've learned through this process is this is like non-negotiable, and even my wife, she understands really well how important this is. And these cycles actually came as an inspiration with her cycles. So
Mhm.
obviously once a month she has a cycle, and what people don't talk about is men have cycles too. It's just not a physical representation of that. And what we found is this perfect balance of the masculine and feminine energy, where when I'm down restoring, she has the energy and up, and then vice versa. And so what I've learned is, especially I think in today's cultures, we're starting to wake up to this more and more because more companies are led by women, and there's simple times when we need to park. There's a reason why, nature has given us these times to pause versus to go. And if we avoid it long enough, that's when the burnouts come. That's when we get tired. And so it's quite simple and easy. Now, that choice starts right now. And so if we were to, bring it down even deeper from the day into every minute of our life, every single minute gives us the opportunity to restart. And that's the beautiful part. Now, how do we surrender? This is when the power of breath, the ha, is so powerful. Breath is what we're born with, and breath is what we die with. But what happens between the first breath and the last breath is exactly what determines the quality, the awareness of our life. And we have a choice again. We're going to either be conscious in through those situations and times, or unconscious when we let the external world dictate the internal. Now, how do we become conscious? So I'll give you an example. Everybody has a cell phones, and everybody, or most people scroll on the cell phone for, a certain amount of time every day. And I call it a scrolling disease that we're going through. Now, again, when we go on the cell phones or computers, we become unconscious. We lose the sight of our breath, so we start breathing in a shallow way, and we also usually tense up. And, let's say that you start a day right off the back, you wake up and you look at your notifications. That's like you want to start your day bad, it's exactly this way. And what happens is we tense up. Maybe there was a negative notification. So now also the emotion arises. Maybe there's some sort of fear or issues that you've been dealing with. And imagine then you've anchored with your choice your entire day to just go this way, or sideways. And then we wonder, why do we feel anxiety at the end of the day? Why are we feeling iffy, tired? And maybe that converts into depression if you've been doing it long enough. And so from psychological perspective, imagine what we're doing to our everyday basis. Now, how do we use cell phone or these external situations mindfully? Um, it's very simple. Focusing on satiating breathing. And what I mean by that, it's about 5 to 7 seconds on inhale in through your nose. You want to come back to your breath as frequently as possible. And you want to breathe with your diaphragm because you don't want to just be in a belly or just in a chest. You want to utilize your capacity. Now, when you inhale in and out your nose, it's been proven this is an incredible way to increase longevity. But most importantly, what I love about nasal breathing and extended or satiating breathing is that you are using your nose as a filter. You are strengthening your cardiovascular system, but you are being conscious. Because when you're consciously breathing, now you are in charge of those choices. So you're not letting the monkey brain dictate, on autopilot. Now imagine the next time you take your cell phone, number one, you're aware of your breath. And number two, instead of tensing up, you actually relax into your body. You relax all of your muscles. So that way you allow all the blood flow and everything that's supposed to be working on your behalf to simply allow it to work. And so I call this the instant presence. And
Mhm.
it's a tool I would like to share with you.
Sure.
And it's so simple. Try to go back to this as soon as or as often as you can, because obviously life goes on, we forget, and that's okay too. But it always starts with number one, breath. So about 6 seconds on inhale, 6 seconds on exhale, in and out your nose. Number two is body awareness. And if you don't know what that even is, just ask yourself, where am I? Where am I? Because if you're anywhere in your past, future, thoughts, computers, you're somewhere outside of yourself. So you got to bring all the awareness into your body. Now, what helps me is I imagine like a champagne like bubbles bubbling up around your body. And when you're breathing for about six, inhale through these bubbles.
Mhm.
So you're also moving out of the limitation of just breathing through your nose. We breathe so much more. Everything is made up of atoms, everything around us and inside us. So this is how we move matter through the power of thought and focused attention. So be in your body. And then when you go back on your phone, it's just an extension of you instead of you becoming the phone and just sucking all of your consciousness into the devices or whatever we might be doing, on the outside world.
Oh, that's so good and so practical. I love that you just explained how to do it so people can actually practice. And I love the all habits need these trigger reminders, right? So I love that you've just consolidated that into, okay, when we pick up our phone, which how many of us, how many times a day actually do that frequently, right? So I want to talk about music, which is where you kind of landed, especially Solfeggio. I found these, wow, it's been around where, but do you want to tell us a little bit about, though many people may not know what that means? I literally every morning when I'm doing my meditation, I have solfeggio frequencies on. So I know this, I love this, I live this. But why don't you tell us a little bit, what are they? Where did they come from? Why are they significant? And how have you used them in your teaching and trainings?
Yeah, well, at the beginning, there was a word, sound, frequency. I mean, in every scripture, in every religion, in every ancient culture, there is something to sound, there's something to music. It is the one thing that can unify us all. And, we could go even further. There's also light, right, attached to the sound. And this is why we also love using light, sound, vibration in our experiences. We
Yeah,
kind
red
of bring
light, PMF,
all
all
of
these
that.
things that we like for biohacking, right? It's all light,
Yeah.
energetic light therapies. Yeah.
It's we have light bodies, but we also our physical bodies, right? They need light to be able to function and have energy. Now, what I found through this is, 440 hertz has been established sometimes in 1930s by the Rockefeller Foundation. And for whatever reason, at that time, and we don't have to get into the conspiracy parts, there has been a lock on a certain frequency that's standardized across TV, radio, any sounds that we're listening to. Now, why, right? Like there's just like there is so many different colors, just like there's so many different vitamins and minerals, there is not one sound frequency that is superior to it all. I mean, it all comes back, it all comes from love, right? Eventually, or from God. But what is really interesting is start going back into just the research. So the two most studied solfeggio frequencies are 528 hertz and 432 hertz. And our most of my DJ sets are actually in 528 hertz. I've really resonated with it. And this was before I even did any study on
That's my
this.
morning hurts. Exactly. The 528. So exactly. Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah. And so, some of the main points, it's been found that it can repair your DNA. It's been also found as it's the frequency of love, where we have this enhanced, energy. Most of the solfeggio or all of the solfeggio frequencies have been shown that it brings you into a parasympathetic nervous system or activates that. And what's interesting is even if you go, let's say 440 1.2. Like even if you're just one off of the 440 hertz, it becomes closer tuned to God than it is whatever has been said. Now, what has been shown is when you are listening to 440 hertz, it's actually distorting to your brain. So, for example, it's the same type of frequency that if you're going in between cities and you're listening to a radio, when it starts muffling in between, that's basically what has been doing it to our brain. So what I love about Solfeggio is it has a whole, scale. And what I've been personally doing is I'll take a commercial music, I'll take Benny Benassi, for example, like Satisfaction. That's one of our latest, remixes that we've done. And we reharmonize the track into Solfeggio. And so that was my whole thing is why do we have to just listen to, I don't want to say boring, but like
Right.
but like,
Right.
subtle healing
Uh-huh.
music, right? Why can't we just heal also with just dance and the ways that we love expressing as humans? And so that's what I did, and I start creating, healing house in our experiences. And to fully understand it, so we teach something called the BDM method, which stands for breath, dance, meditation. And I originally come from EDM. So when I learned how to DJ and do all of this, it was, I loved I loved electric music. But I didn't love the environment. When I stopped drinking alcohol about 4 years ago, I like could not be there as a DJ, even though I loved it. It was amazing, but like I was like, what am I doing here? Like this is not why I wanted to start music. And so then we start bringing it into our experiences to also have this a sober way to experience what we call the XTC. So it's the inner ecstasy that if you go beyond the thinking mind long enough and you move into these spirals, which is all enhanced by the frequency of the sound and vibration, you let go of that monkey brain. You experience timelessness. And what I've learned through this state of timelessness, which is what we all seek so much, um,
It's flow,
you
right?
it's
Yeah.
flow, it's a flow state. You start refueling your emotions. And so what we have forgotten as a society is to follow our passions, is to, maybe it's through art, maybe it's through singing, maybe it's through dancing, maybe it's through being a musician. But what I make sure every single day is I bring this state of timelessness because that's what's balancing that our heart. And so that's like a little bit of a glimpse, into the why and the fun part of it too.
Oh, I love it. And if you're out there listening, I'm sure we'll share your resources, your websites, and all that you do for sure. But you can literally go to Spotify or your favorite tunes and find these solfeggio frequencies. And I just want to say, since I come from kind of I always say I'm spiritual, not religious, but I definitely have a belief in God and a strong faith. And a lot of these, like if you are, Catholic or in monistic traditions, they have used these. This is a very like common spiritual practice over the years, so it's not something new or that's not like this has been around for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and almost any spiritual tradition has used these frequencies to elevate the state and the closeness to experiencing God in your life. And I just want to kind of say that because if people are listening, like, what is this new weird stuff? It's not new at all. It's very,
Thousands of
very old.
years.
Yeah, and
Literally, it's been found since the ancient civilizations. Like it's literally been like the foundation to this. And that's, by the way, like our mission is to unite the world, one person at a time. And we do it through these tools that are not bounded to any religion. We all need to breathe. That's very universal. We all love sound, music, expression, and that's kind of been our message is, it's whatever religion you have, whatever beliefs you have it, but let's unite, let's share, let's learn all of these gifts from one another, not from a place of competition, not from a place of judgment, not from a place of lack, because there's been enough of that. It's the old paradigm. And if we want to bridge into what I like to call the Earth 2.0, you know, unity is where it's at when we let go of the self-interest of the me, what's in it for me, and that victim mindset that a lot of our civilization's been living in. We step into the we. And when we start realizing how powerful we are, and if you bring it to the quantum, 1 + 1 is not two, it's exponential. And that exponential energy and acceleration of one another, where we reflect the best of each other, is exactly the communities that we're creating around the world.
Yeah, it really comes down to the frequency of unconditional love, as you mentioned before. Like love to me is the most powerful healer and the most powerful transformational. There's nothing more powerful. This has been so great, and I'm sure people are more interested to know where they can find you, your workshops, retreats. Where is your best website, or where can people find more about you?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we do over 100 events a year all across the world. So from workshops, retreats, experiences, we call it a system reset. We also curate stages. So like for Dave Asprey this year at the biohacking conference, we have 3 different rooms curating all of this. So if you guys are in the biohacking space, definitely a place to check it out. And our website is noaaon, noaaon.com. We are going through a rebranding, so it's going to be upperaeon.com, and we'll have that notice. We also, I would love to offer you a free community, so you can actually join our group. So digitally, what we do is we have something called the System Reset on School, Skool. And essentially, it's a way to connect with all of these people from all around the world. And it's a gamified approach. So that way, as you are doing your practices, we have something called 7-day commitment to you. And I highly suggest to start there. And it will give you daily 5 to 10 minutes max exercises to be able to convert into starting the day right. That's like the biggest foundation. And we also have a consciousness expansion e-commerce website. We brought in the most important things we need for daily basis, from white light, blue light, the red light, vibrational items to EMF. And that's something also on our website.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for the work that you do. And I just love your story of cyclist to transformational, person bringing this information to the world. We'll be sure and link if you're listening or driving at the show notes. You can find all that. And thanks again for your time today, Pavel. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining me again for another episode of Resiliency Radio. As I mentioned at the onset, if you have not subscribed yet, you would do us a great favor by clicking the subscribe button below and click on the bell so that you're notified of new episodes. As you know, we have new episodes coming out every week. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And we would love if you stop, leave a review, leave me a note. I try to come in and answer all the queries that are below the show here. So if you do have questions, leave me a comment and I'll come back and give you some information to the best of my ability. Thank you so much for being a part of Resiliency Radio. Thanks for coming back to watch again and again. We appreciate you, and we appreciate the ability to get to 500,000 subscribers. Thanks so much. We will see you next week.